I'm just gonna tweet it. Cool. Okay, so yesterday we were working on this form, and we did a bunch of things. We set the layout up, and we got the ID working. So over here you'll see there's an ID which we generate based on the labels. There's the email address and some hash, and then we add it to for, and on the input we attach this ID so that the link works. I mean, they get connected. And the other thing we'll do is we have a description, so we add this description -help on it. And this thing is also useful because we attach this to the input by aria described by. So yesterday I didn't really show you how this would sound. Let me try to do that now. Alright, speakers are on full, so you'll hear it through the mic. So it might not be crisp, but it would be accurate. Okay, let's go.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Localhost 8000.
That's the one. Now I need to do next.
Name.
Yep.
Visited link. Link. Skip to content.
That's the one. I click.
Press link. Skip to content.
Perfect.
Heading level 1.
Nice.
Form.
So now I'm on this
User
side.
form to ask the user for related information.
Yeah, this is the next thing is what you want to hear.
Email address. Email address. Edit text. Enter email. We'll never share your email with anyone else.
Right. So you see how I'm just on focus. How do I disable this?
VoiceOver off.
Okay. So you saw how I was on focus on the input, and it said email address, edit text, and then it described we'll never share your email with anyone else while I'm still in focus here. So that's kind of what you want. You want like a screen reader user to know that this is a editable field. So it said edit text, it described what it is, and then it read out the help text as well. So that's perfect. Because the thing is, when you tab again, it should go to the next input field, and it wouldn't really read out. It wouldn't focus on the things in between, which is how it should work. Cool. So now let's get to, so one thing that I said last time, which is like these hashes, they change with every render. And so on your website or on like for an end user, it doesn't really matter because they don't really actually see the ID ever. But for something like snapshot testing, it does matter because the ID changes every time, even though everything else is the same. So a solution to that, where is my form index? A solution to that is like you create deterministic IDs, and like deterministic is a fancy word of saying like in the same environment you should get the same ID every time. And the nicest way to do that is I'm going to create a utility, which is, let's call it automatic IDs, I guess. Automatic ID JS, right? And then I have a little bit of plumbing here to hook it up. So import automatic ID from source utils automatic ID JS, and I'm just gonna export this. Okay, there we go. And now we can import it here. Import automatic ID. Oh, I don't know if I capitalize both letters. I probably should. Automatic ID. Okay. From React non-util, so I can just drop it here. Great. Now let's write this, and this function is supposed to give you like an ID, right? So export default. Yikes, automatic ID. I'm just gonna call it get ID to make it simple here. Okay, so what this does is we kind of start with an ID of 1, like publicly, like at the top root, and we also attach a prefix, right? So for example, this library is called reactron, or we can call it automatic ID. So I guess I'm going to call it automatic ID and let's call it AI. Sounds stupid, but it's fine. An AI hyphen maybe. So every time you want an ID, it will return prefix plus like append plus plus ID, right? Perfect. This looks fine. So we're gonna test it, of course. So now over here we should go to, where are we generating the hash? There we go. This one, and just replace this with automatic ID. Just call it. We can replace hash with ID. Actually, it's fine. I just call it. Or let me replace hash over here. That's better. Automatic ID. Okay. ID is read. Should be let. Of course it is. Cool. So now if you look at the output, yeah, you see this thing is AI-2. Actually, let's start with 0 so that the first one is actually 1. Right, so yep, you see this is email address and then the hash is AI1 and then AI1 help or email address or something, right? And this plays an interesting role that we can actually give it the prefix of our own. So we can choose this label to be the prefix, right? So, and then we can get rid of this entire thing and then say label, right? And get ID can actually take a label, and if there is a prefix, then it will use that. Otherwise, it will use the label that you gave. I guess label should still have this. Maybe we can bring this inside. So I'm going to say label, replace all of this, and then add. Okay, add hyphen, and then this. So AI can go away. Okay, not too bad. So now this remains the same. Oh, whoops, screwed up. So anyways, this kind of, if you did not mention the label, this becomes AI1, AI1 help, and then the next one would be AI2. But we have label. This is the right way to do that, right? Or do you like, yeah, I think so. Oh, we forgot to pass label. Damn. Okay. Perfect. Great. So now if you pass something, it will use that. Otherwise, it will just put AI. So sweet. So this will work. And then let's go to password, and you say this is 2. Now, the only interesting part about this is when you run this in snapshot testing, and you're looking like an isolated component, like a form maybe, or just like the input field, it will always get 1, right? And if there are multiple fields, it will always get 1, 2, 3 the same, right? Whereas if you're on like an application and you have something else that has like maybe multiple forms on the page or anything else that requires automatic IDs, these can be whatever, right? They might be 3, 4, depending on when they enter the page, was there a loader between, like all of that. And all of that doesn't matter because for the user, the only thing you want is to link them the right way, like connect it with the right, label and description. But for the rest of it, this is perfect. Okay, so now that's done. What we should figure out now is some alignment over here. So what I want is like label should always be left and take some space. Or actually, what I really like is the label to be top aligned, like just above the input. So I'm gonna try that first. Where are our labels? Cool. So you have these labels, and I'm gonna use element again. The element is a label, and this is the element that we've created for ourselves. This comes from utils. This to do is done. Let me clear that. So I want to do this because then it gives me access to all of the other things that I want. For example, I want this to be a block and have some margin, right? So I can do all of that now. So you see, this is a block. Now I want like a tiny bit of margin under it. So margin bottom, let's give it 2. Let's start with 2. We have 3 after every field. So this should be 2. And then after the input field, maybe I want 1 more. Oh, we don't control the input field. That's interesting. So now this is one of the things I don't like, but it's sometimes you got to do it, which is until now we've been trying to do everything bottom, right? So the email and then this and this, it's always bottom. But sometimes you run into a case where this help text is not on every field, right? So you want this help text to have some margin, but you don't really want to give it on the input because the input shouldn't know if there's a help text after it, right? So if I give a margin bottom down on this field, it's also going to add margin bottom on the next field. And even though there's nothing below it. So sometimes, very rarely, you got to do something like this, where you give a margin top on something, even though we're using margin bottom everywhere else. Actually, I'm going to put it here. Okay. Cool, so this works. Stylistically, this kind of looks ugly. So, okay, so another thing here is that I kind of took a decision here, which is that input field should always be like this, but that's not really my decision to take. Like, it's if you're building an application and you want to put things next to each other, you should be able to. So we're gonna make that whole thing themable, and the way we do that, interesting. We could have layouts here. So it's like you might have a 2-column split, or you could have like a vertical layout. Both are okay options. Okay, but before that, I want to also do other things, which is I don't like how this label looks. I want it to be either more subtle, like this one, so that it doesn't hog all the attention. Color of the label is subtle. And maybe a smaller font size. Okay, let's check out what Bootstrap does for inspiration. Components, forms. Okay, so they don't really do that. They kind of do exactly what we have done until now. And they do have some difference, I guess. Oh, this is lighter. This and this are the same. Placeholder has the same shade. Or this thing is slightly darker. Okay, what I want to try here is I want to make this uppercase and then like do like a smaller font. Okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try it here first because we're designing in the browser. Text transform uppercase, and then of course this looks slightly weird now because the font size is a little too big. We're gonna go with a smaller font size and also increase the letter spacing. Actually, let me make it 1. So this kind of looks worse. I think I liked it earlier, yeah. Alright, I guess this is fine. So another thing that we've done here is that we've put everything in the component. This is not how we're building it. We want everything to be themable. So let's move all of this out to our token styles, or design tokens as you might call them. So cool, you have components here, you have a form, we're gonna create a new one, form.js, and import it, even though there's nothing to import yet. Form, whoa, a smaller one to copy. Okay, perfect. So now I have something to copy from. Close this, keep this open. Yep. Import form as styles from tokens/component. Sweet. So now we have this. Okay, so this is the form. Wait, the form actually isn't even a form yet. What did I do? The form is a div. That's stupid. It should be a form. So element has a form, and then pass down all the props so that at least you can attach an on-click. Oh, element. Okay, cool. That's better. Sweet. So now there are a bunch of things that we should do, which is these are the styles for the form. The form actually doesn't have any styles, so nothing goes over here. But then we want field to have a bunch of styles. So we can either just call it field and then drop a bunch of things in it, and then over here use styles.field. Or we can, is there a semantic word for fields? Do we call them field set? I think field set is a thing. Field set. Cool. What does this mean? Used to group several controls as well as labels within a field. Okay. Oh, so it's like multiple input fields. Even though we can get away by just putting one here, right? Like if you just put one label and one field. Oh, even they kind of do that, where all of these are related fields. Okay, is there another example? Field set. Yes, these two are like related, and then you don't want like a big margin. That is kind of what we're doing. Like these are related fields, so they should be together. So instead of making the field as a div, we're going to make it a field set, and then we can say field set. The HTML prop, HTML something. And then we can move this. Let's see if any of this works. Cool, thank you HTML for letting us know. It has like nice borders here. We're going to do a margin bottom as 3 and hope it works. And we're going to do border none. Cool. Right, and then we're going to drop our styles on like the topmost element. Styles. Cool, so we dropped these styles, but I think this did not work. It did not pick up field set on its own. Okay, so maybe we should, instead of doing this, we should actually put it on the field set, where we say style dot field set. Boom, boom, boom. 3, not 4. Right, and then these styles would translate. That works. It also gave like an additional padding to them, or like a margin and padding, everything. I kind of like it, but it's not for me to decide. So I'm going to say margin 0, padding 0, margin bottom 3. And yep, let people who build this Like I want it to be themable for anyone who uses this, right? Cool, so this is done. Let's move color, display. Oh, this is the label. Okay, so we're gonna add label styles here, label, and just move all of this. There we go. And instead replace this with styles.label. All of this should be an object, and this should be 2. So displays block, yeah, I got rid of this color and margin. Sweet. Now we come to the help text. This is gonna be I'm gonna call it description because that's what it is now. So description, capital D, and description over here, and I need to change a bunch of examples as well. But first, I'm gonna take all of these styles dot description and put them here. Color is subtle, font size is small, margin is 2. So you see how we're still following all our tokens, which is key. Cool, time to edit examples. Oh wait, this doesn't actually go out. This is perfect. Alright, so now we have this. The function doesn't have any, the component itself doesn't have any stylistic attributes to it. All of the stylistic attributes are outside in a theme so that people can customize it and do super weird things like make the background pink. Let's see if that actually works. Heyo. Cool. That actually doesn't look very bad. Alright, something else that we should really look out is what is the style on the form. It seems like there is no style, but there is also some screw up here, which is label. We should destructure that, right? So what all do we get from props? Children. What? That's it. Where does label come from? As label. Oh, I get it. So this is actually also a valid. This is a valid HTML prop, right? Which kind of educates me that should we be calling this label styles? It's a little redundant. I think we should destructure this first then. These are styles, and then I'm gonna destructure as form. No wait, labels, styles, and what else we got? Field set, styles, description, styles. And then everything else can still be called form styles. Form styles, from styles. Yuck, I hate it, but it probably makes this easier. So description right at the end. Field set styles go over here. Label styles. Oh, we broke it. Field set styles. Okay, we're gonna fix that. But also it fixes. It did not fix this at all. Form styles. Oh, because it's called label. I don't know. Say label as label styles. Field set as field set styles. Description as description styles. And everything else is form styles, I guess. Okay, so now my form does not have extra. The bad part about this is like you can't really. It doesn't look nice. Like we restructured it out, which is nice. We don't have extra variables now, but it doesn't look very good. Well, that's okay. Yeah. I just to test this theory out, I think the way to do HTML attributes could be something like this. Like do an ampersand and then say what's inside it. So this way a label is gonna get the styles while we can remove, right, all of this goes here. I can cut this out. This is just a theory. I'm not really sure if this API is supported. Did it work? Reload. It didn't work. Okay, so then I guess what we're doing is the right perfect solution. Great. Cool. So now that we have our themed styles, we can move forward. Let's look at the comments for a second. Hi Sid, can you just tell about form validation, like showing validation messages and enable, disable the submit button? So I want to say two things to that. First is thanks for reminding me about validation message. I kind of forgot. We should figure out how to show error messages, right? That's something we haven't done yet. So there should be an error state in the input fields. The other thing is that I don't really want to get into state over here, right? Like how do you enable, disable submit button, or when should you show an error message is a lot about how do you handle state inside a form. And that's kind of not what I want to do with this library. Like that's something that should live outside the library in your application. So this is not exactly the right place for that. However, there's like 100 million articles on this. I think I learned it from the React docs. They actually have a section on form state, which has suggestions for what you should do if your form is small. It also links to a few libraries which you can use if your form is getting complex. So you should start there, and then it will give you a lot of terms to look for. Cool. But for now, we're gonna go to our form, and then we're gonna go to our error states. So let's start with examples. So examples of a form. What it's called? Form examples. Yep. Cool. Function. Error, or let's say validation errors, and we're gonna copy some of this. Right. I'm gonna introduce some errors over here. So, how do you show if your field has an error? I guess you can do something like mark the error here. So, for example, email address is not valid, right? And that should be an error. Now let's go to form.mdx. Error states. I'll also copy some of this. Okay, so we have another one for validation errors, where what we want to do is pass an error on the field, and this should show the error somewhere, and then also make this all red and stuff. So let's start with showing the error first. So I guess the error should show here. Description, we're gonna pull out the error, and if there is an error, then we're gonna make an error component, and I guess just dump the error in it. Right, that seems easy. And then we want some styles on this thing. So error styles, which should come from here. Body break. Oh, should also have a null here. Okay. Valid object is not okay. Fine. Okay, let's define error, and the color should just be some red. Okay, we kind of screwed up, I guess. Okay, I'm gonna start removing things to figure out where did we screw up. So definitely in the error, which is the new thing we introduced. And what if happens if I remove the error styles? Oh damn, I know what we're doing. We didn't even create this component. Function error takes the props, returns a element, which is a div with error styles and any additional props that are given to it. Cool. Great. Now scroll down over here. So this is what we have here, where the error style is reds of 2. I've just given it a random thing. Another thing I want to do is like make description and this the same size, I guess. So it should be small. Yeah, and now this is tricky. Do we put the error first or description first? I'm gonna go with error first. Right. I'm also gonna add an error to the password field here. We should really give these things a header ID or something. They're not linkable right now. Error on the password. Password should have at least 8 characters. Okay, I'll have to keep like scrolling up and down, so I'm gonna change the order a little, and just for while we're testing this, make validation error the first example. Yeah. Okay, so we have the errors now, which looks cool. This is the description with the top margin. There we go. This is why we should always use bottom margin. It was gonna come and bite us sometime. So okay, so this was a bad idea. Clearly, we should not have done this. The error should have a margin bottom, so that there's space here. Actually, we don't really need space here. Where we need space is the input. Right, and then we're gonna also take input here. Field set. Inputs gives you input styles, and we're gonna pass this over here. There we go. So now this input has a border, then we get email address. I don't know, this just kind of looks weird. Even over here, I guess this one looks fine. I'm guessing this is also then good. I guess I'm okay with this. Alright, so email address not, and then we want to make this red. So the thing we should do here is, if there is an error, then we should also let the input know. So the input doesn't need to know the whole error, it actually just needs to know if there is an error, right? So what we've done is we're going to pass a has error prop, which is going to be a boolean on the input. So let's go to input, and the input is super small. Input dot prop types. We're going to add one here. Actually, let's document it later first. Let's just make it work. We got a styles thing here going on. Now I'm going to say I'm going to override this style, right? So, and say something like, if the structure has error, if has error exists, then pass on styles dot error, otherwise don't. Can I do this? This looks wrong. Yikes. I'm gonna break it down. Const input styles is just styles, and then if has error, then I want to merge them. So object dot assign input styles and input styles dot error. This should merge them so that we can only use input styles. Does this merge on this? I'm not sure. Anyways, we're gonna go to the tokens input and then add some styles for error. So in the case of an error, we want the color to change to, let's say, reds, or colors dot reds of 2. Actually, not the color, the border color is what we want. Sweet, this looks great. Now if there is an error, this becomes red. If there is not an error, then it shouldn't become red, which it did right now. Let's go back. Cool. I'm gonna just like console log what has, or maybe we're gonna use that as a placeholder. I really like using the UI itself as a debugging playground. Great. So these things have errors in them. These things don't have error, but it still makes them red. Why? I think we did not duplicate them, so they kind of just become, we just affected the global scope. Yeah, that's the one. We actually only want to create a new object over here. Okay, can I move this now? Can I do something like this, where object assign an empty object styles, and then put a conditional here, which is like has error, take input styles dot error, otherwise put an empty object, and then mix all of them. This looks weird. Yeah, it doesn't even, the conditional inside doesn't even work. Cool, we're gonna keep it this way. This is pretty cool too. Great, so we have an error field, and without the error, with the error. The margin game is still pretty whack on this. I want a smaller margin, I think. Where is it? Not this one, not this one, not this one. Token / form. I want the input to have like a smaller margin. There we go, that's lovely. Sweet, this looks pretty cool. I like it. Submit, and then I want to attach like a clear button in the examples. So we're going to go to form, examples, add another button here, which is secondary, and I'm going to call it clear. I'm curious, where will this fall? Like, where will this go? Yeah, it's going to be sticky, which is bad. Let's also put the validation errors at the end. Okay. Yeah, so this is no good. Also, maybe this should be a link instead of a secondary bordery button. Yeah, I like this. Instead of clear, I'm going to call it reset. Now, this looks fine in like the reset form, but we don't really want them to stick. So just for an example, I'm going to use secondary for now so that we can see what's happening. Yes, this is no good. Who should decide what the margin between them should be? Should it be while you're writing this code? Like maybe you're writing this and you're like, I'm going to give a margin left to this button, right? And then it's like while you're building out the form, you make this decision? Or should it be baked inside the form logic and not at an ad hoc form button level? So if you want all your forms to be consistent, I guess it should be logic that lives in the form, right? And we should be able to code it here, right? It's gonna say button. We can do this, but then it gives a margin right to each one of them, which is not exactly ideal. Like the last one should not have a margin right. That's silly. But that's something that we can probably take care of, right? Interesting. I don't really know what's the right answer here. Because if you're creating, like I've done this thing in the past where Cosmos, the project that I used to work on before, over there we did have like the exact same thing where we had a form. Where's my form? I built a search there, form, right? And the form could have multiple. Where is it? Yeah, could have multiple actions like this, right? And then we used to add some margin here, right? The API is very different than I want it here. Span, there we go. So this is a button group, I guess. And then we had these. And then you could have a margin right. And this margin right, I'm sure, came from some token. So let's actually read the code because I don't remember it. It's open source. You can always go and find it. It's called form actions, I guess. It's either this file. Yeah, I think it's this file. No, it's not. It's this file. Yeah. Let's see. Margin. Right. No. Oh, that's interesting. It's actually a grid with a grid gap. Huh. Oh, no. Sorry, that's not it. There's a button group. We style the button group here and then make it column start. Yikes. Okay. I'm sure there's a gap. Props 25. That's not the right number. We're looking for an 8 pixel number. Wait a second. Is this a... I shouldn't have closed that. Is that a property of the button group? Interesting. Form... Yeah, there we go. Interesting. So the button group that we had built over there had margins baked in. So it's like whenever you want to stack buttons next to each other, use a button group. In our project right now, what we have done is when we have button group, we actually want like a pills kind of thing. So we connect them together with no margin. Okay, so it's like a different style choice then. But the interesting thing is that it still did come from some token, which I forgot to show you. So button group dot tsx, I guess. Margin for button, margin right. Okay, property is coming from spacing dot extra small. That's the one. So it's still customizable with tokens, but lives in a different place. For us over here, we kind of need to figure out what do we do. This is a property of our form right now. We can code it. Maybe we should call it like the actions. I'm going to steal this API and call it actions, and then call it gap. But this is like such a custom thing, you can't really replicate this. Should be called button. Okay, let's look at the API then. So right now, if you want two buttons, form.mdx, there. Right, if you want two buttons, you kind of make them separate. If we were to keep them together, we'll probably do something like this. We will do a form.actions, right, and then put the buttons inside it, and then form.actions gets to decide what the margin is, right? And then you can control that some by the theme, I guess, right, by putting it here, where you say actions, and if we also go the grid way, then we can do a gap, and that would work. Or we just go with button and then say margin right, and that gets applied to the action. I'm tending towards this one because it's not a custom API like Gap. That's something we'll have to implement, even though it's not real. And we can make it work, but then it's really difficult to explain to someone because all of these are CSS properties. You don't really know what the layout of them. You don't have to. If you make it Gap, then you have to know that there is even though it's kind of obvious, but you have to guess that maybe it's using something like grid, and then you can also add other grid properties, right, like the column layout and all that. So we're going to stick to the ugly method, which is just doing form.actions. Cool. So form index, and that's like a weird lesson, which is sometimes the best solution is kind of the ugly one, right? The not so like pretty, I don't want to call it pretty, it's like the simple dumb version of it. Cool. So we're going to put actions. This is going to be form.actions. Form.actions is a component which gets some props. Sunanjan says, hi, good morning. Ooh, it's 11 o'clock. But good morning to you as well. It's going to be a div with all the props passed down. Right. So now we have a transparent component, I guess. I'm going to go to form examples and add a form actions, wrap it. Cool. So we have our actions here, nothing changes, and now we're going to do the same thing we did in field, which is we'll loop through them and we'll try to give them extra props. So children.map props.children, we get a child here. Let's just return the child for now, just to see if the loop logic is correct, and then gonna render children. there's an extra this thingy. There we go. All right, now, so what we want to do is we want to react dot create clone, what is called react dot clone element. Take the child, add an additional props, which is margin right is something. We don't control what this is. We should just say button styles. Right, and this comes from here. So this is perfect, almost. The bad part about this is that it has a margin right on both of them. Even though this one is the last element, it should not have a margin right. And we can like loop through this and figure out if it's the right, if it's like the last element or not. But then we also don't know other things like, do you want to give something else here, right? Like maybe you want to add another style here, which is, I don't know, maybe you're adding margin top even though it should not, but something, right? You're adding extra styles because this is completely themable. So if you're adding extra styles, we want them to apply on everything. So we're gonna live with the extra margin. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. I'm gonna change the examples to make it not secondary because I want to use a link here, and then go to form mdx link. Cool. So this is perfect. There is the submit, the reset. There's a gap in between, which you can see by the cursor is changing. When you tab, this thing works. So it's cool. The other thing which is interesting, which is looking at the time, probably the last thing we'll do today, is the role inside a form. So both of these are just buttons right now, and let's actually create an on-click handler on the example to be able to show this. So form, I'm going to add an on submit, sorry. On submit is going to be, I don't know, just alert something. Yikes. Alert submit. Page reloads. Right, if I do this and I hit enter, oh god damn it. Right, it goes submit and then it reloads, which first of all, let's kill the reload. Const on like function on submit is something that gets an event. It says event.prevent default because we don't want that, and then it alerts submitted. Cool. So now the interesting thing is what happens if our button is disabled, right? We have this and then we hit enter. Right now everything works. What if we want to make our button disabled? So let's go to our button and say disabled. And because all of these props go all the way down, this should be disabled. Okay, it's not. Oh wait, I think it is. Let's see. We don't have disabled styles. Yeah, this button is disabled, but we don't have disabled styles yet. Okay. Let's go to button disable. Oh, we don't have anything for that. Okay, button token / button. We have a bunch of variants, which is fine. Okay, what I really want to do is something like this, where I can say if it's disabled, then opacity is like 0.5 and cursor is like default and not the hand thingy. I don't know if this is the right way though. Yeah, it's okay. Let's look at style system too and hope they have an example for this. Documentation, API, reference table, disable, nope. Disable, nope. Is it in the variant docs? Variants. No, I'm gonna also open. I'm hoping somebody's asked this question before. Doesn't look like it. Nope. Oh, there we go. I see something. The change log. Removed all of these properties. Okay. Hover and all of this in 3.0. Okay, I'm sure they changed how it should work. Wait, so if you can do disabled, it would probably look a lot like hover. So we should probably search for hover first. API reference table. Hover styles. There we go. This is in the variant. Right, what I want is to have it in the global scope, but our style looks kind of the same. Okay, so it seems like it does work in the variance bit. So what if I do a disabled here? Yeah, what happened here? Wait, the hover works, right? So why doesn't the disabled also work? It's called hover or it's called hover? I think it's called hover. I just pronounced it wrong. Okay, but this is disabled now. Which means I can't even click it, but it doesn't really show the styles. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look this up. But for now, you'll just have to trust me that it's disabled. And I'm gonna mark it as disabled by doing some style things. So let's add it here, where if the button is disabled, then actually I'm gonna write a style override where I'm saying if it is disabled, then opacity, if it is disabled, then should be 0.5, otherwise it should be 1. Right. This is like super custom override styles. Great, so now we have that. Not a fan, but will do for now. Great, so now what happens is when you enter stuff and you hit enter, the form still gets submitted, right? Because there is something about these rules, like we're not sure which button was called. So let's also try to do that, where we say, let's give an on click. Oh, there we go. Both have type submit, so that's obviously wrong. This should just be appearance. Cool. So let's go to Bootstrap and look at the accessibility props for this. Bootstrap, components, forms. Sizing, read-only, They have a lot of things. Maybe it's start towards the end. Oh god, button. I want to look for role. No? Okay, form controls, which is also not the one. Can I just search for accessible? Okay. Custom styles, custom forms. No, that's not what I want. Should I go read on buttons? Yep, there's nothing here about accessibility. Okay. I'm going to go back to Cosmos docs because I've done that before. Form. Primary additional actions, which is, oh, we have this, nice. Yeah, so this is what we want, right? We want this to be the primary one and this not to trigger submit. Over here, what's happening is even when this button, like both of these buttons right now trigger submit, right? This should never trigger submit. And the way to do that is by giving roles to button. Form actions, right? Role, nope, type. There we go. So yeah, so in the primary, the first one should get role type as submit. The second one should get type as button. So those are the differences, I guess. Can we also go to the... I'm hoping button docs has that. Button. Is there a type here? Type. Type is of button type. I don't know what button type means. We're gonna find it. Oh, that's a lot of types. Button type. Okay, so button type can be submit button and reset. Awesome. So there's actually a reset type as well, which is what we should be using here. All right, perfect. So let's open button types, accessibility. Actually, this is probably not even accessibility, but you know, button type HTML. Perfect. What, really? That's a fake pop-up. Why? Okay, submits the current data. This is the default. I think this is the most important thing that I was looking for. It's like when you don't give anything, everything is a submit, right? So like both of these buttons, when you don't give, like even if we don't mention the type here, both of these work as submit. And that means, first of all, this shouldn't do submit, even if you like do even prevent default or something. But when you have something like this, oh god, okay, add something wrong, right? And you just press enter, even though this button is disabled, the other button would like be submitted, right? So this should be type reset, or it can be, if it's not exactly reset, you can do it as type button also. That's also perfectly fine. And now it comes, like, now the question is, should this be the responsibility of the user using it, or should it be something that the system should take care? On the very surface of it, it looks like it's very difficult for somebody else to know what's going on here, right? Like the system wouldn't really know what you're going for, right? Like when you have, what? Don't save here. Yeah, when you have these two buttons, you should probably write these. Or maybe the other API which could work here is if we, instead of opening this for buttons, we do it like this, where the primary action, right, and this is now a prop, right, and then the prop receives something, and then you have the secondary action, right, and then this is the API where you say form actions and then primary prop, secondary prop, right, and then it becomes easier because the primary prop, the system, the component library can just add a type submit to this because it's a primary, and then everything else can be, what do you say, role can be button, right? I'm not super sure which one should it be, but for now I'm gonna put it here and then at least document this form index button types, right? I'm just gonna leave like a very poor note here so that I can come back and improve it later. Make sure you attach type to action to buttons inside the form. Actually, to each button form, by default they act like submit buttons. If valid types are, I'm just gonna go here and take this. Valid types are, this is a list, so submit, reset, button, attach an event handler. Cool. Make sure you attach type button to each form. They act like by default they act like submit buttons. I think we already did this, so I'm gonna remove this. Right, so this is cool. I'm also gonna make sure the documentation actually does this. So we have type submit on this one, which is perfect. This should be type reset. Perfect. Now this is something that we can actually do, which is if like we loop through the children, maybe I'm just spitballing. We loop through the children inside form.actions. Like if this is the API, we loop through the children, and then we say if there is no type mentioned, then we're gonna add a type. Which I'm not a big fan of. It's like you can do this with a higher order component where you take the child and you wrap it in a higher order component, and then it will take care of it. Or we can just leave it for people to handle, which probably is the right thing to do here. Anyway, let me just patch up the last bit, which is button should be wrapped in form actions. Form actions. Right, this is our API where we wrap things in form actions, so that at least we keep the option of customizing it open for later. Cool. So hope you learned something, especially about this. This is something that I've tripped on before, and then like the bug I showed you where one disabled leads to everything disabled happened. So hope that's something that is new for you and you learned something. All right, I'm gonna push all of this code to GitHub, so you can go to the repo, which is on my handle /Reactron. I know it's a crappy name, but it's what we have right now. And yep, so I'll see you tomorrow where we will do something else. Let's see. We can do a card. Cards are boring, but we'll have to do it eventually. Or we can do a list maybe, or a modal. I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow, I guess. All right. So see you tomorrow. Ciao.